Hello. Hello, my beautiful people. How are you? I hope you're doing great. Today, we're going to talk about books that I've read in June. I've read only 3 books, but I really want to talk about these books because I loved all of them. Grab your drink of choice. For me, it's black tea because I already drank like 3 cups of coffee today and I can't consume any more coffee today, so yeah. Anyway, grab your drink of choice and let's talk books. So the first book I read in June was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Who's surprised? Nobody is surprised. I think everybody is talking about this book and I feel like everybody has already read this book. I also asked my parents if they have read this book and they did not, so I was pretty surprised, but I recommended this book to all of my family and now all of my family is reading Steinbeck. So let me read you a synopsis of this book. Set in the rich farmland of California's Salinas Valley, this sprawling and often brutal novel follows the intertwined destinies of 2 families, the Trusks and the Hamiltons, whose generations helplessly reenact the fall of Adam and Eve and the poisonous rivalry of Cain and Abel. Here's a work in which Steinbeck created his most mesmerizing characters and explored his most enduring themes: the mystery of identity, the inexplicability of love, and the murderous consequences of love's absence. When I tell you I was glued to this book, I'm not lying. If I'm being honest, I was so scared of reading this book. It has been on my bookshelf for so long. I think I had bought it in November and I read it in June, so it says a lot. I was scared by the size of it because it's a fatty, it's a fat book. Let's be honest. And I feel like based on the reviews on this book, most of the people are scared. Yeah, I was not alone, and that kind of comforted me. What can I say about this book? First of all, the writing style of John Steinbeck is, as I said, mesmerizing. Because you're kind of plunged into this heat of California, and he just mesmerizes you with the way he writes these characters, the way all of their traces and all of their steps are interconnected. And I was also so fascinated by his way of storytelling because I never read any of his works before, and I definitely will. I was so fascinated with the way he introduced the character so elegantly and so eloquently. He's just a master, a genius at creating characters. The character of Caddy here, I'm sorry, she's the mastermind. And as much as I hated her, I was also so fascinated with her character. And Steinbeck shows that in one person there can be good if you just want to see that. And also it's one's choice to be good or evil, and it's your choice to create your own destiny. And this book just gives hope, and I think this is the most fundamental thing. Even though your family might be following a certain path for centuries, you might choose your own direction. And I don't want to spoil anything. This is basically what happens by the end of this book. Now, if you ask me who was my favorite character in this book, it was Lee. It was Lee. Something was very grounding about him, and he said very right things at very right times. And when he almost, spoiler alert, when he almost left, I thought that no, if he's leaving, I'm not finishing this book. I heard so many people say that their favorite character was Hamilton, and as much as I loved him, I found myself comforted by the presence of Lee, so I decided for myself that it will be my favorite character. Also, I cannot mention the fact that reading Steinbeck is like taking an advice or asking for advice your grandfather. I don't know why, but this book reminded me of my own grandfather. In this book, you find so much wisdom and so much thought. You can actually tell that the person who was writing this is willing to share his way of seeing things. And maybe it sounds just generic, we can say this all about any other book, but with Steinbeck, you just feel like you have come to your grandfather and you're having a cup of tea and you're asking him for an advice, how to live your own life and what path should you choose. And he tells you all of this. And he tells you this story, this miraculous story where all of the characters are seemingly condemned to a certain way of life, but yet they choose a life for themselves and they have this power, yet they're all interconnected and there's no good without evil. I found it very interesting historically speaking because this is happening in California within the era of technological innovation. It was fascinating to see all of these characters obsessing over new technologies and wanting to make money off of it and profit off of it. Not all of the characters, but some of the characters. I was just so fascinated by this era of technological innovation because it was less than 100 years ago, apparently. Yet we have come such a long way and we've made such a progress. And still, the way this book is written remains pertinent. I don't think I have anything new to say on this book. I feel like so many people have talked about this book. That's a talent of storytelling, and I wish I had a talent like that, but of course not. Speaking of tea, the next book I'm going to talk about is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is my mother's favorite book, and we actually watched a theater play, 9-hour theater play based on this book. And when we saw this play, I feel like I was in kind of a euphoric state. I don't know how to describe this feeling, but it is a feeling when you see something that affects you so deeply and that touches you so deeply that you almost forget who you are and you are kind of changed from the inside. I know that some people hate this book, not like hate, but so many people do not really like this book because it has so many characters and they all have the same name. And in my edition, Modern Classics Penguin Edition, they have a family tree. And in the beginning, I was like, oh, I saw the play. I will not need this. Like, it is for people who are constantly forgetting names of characters. Like, it's fine. I'm going to be fine. No, you will use this family tree. You will. You will have to. Because I would be reading and I would just forget who that person was, and even though what I was reading was very interesting, I would just forget. Thank you, Penguin Modern Classics, for including this family tree. I appreciate it. I don't know if any other editions have this family tree, but if they do, good for them, because it's just essential. In this book, we follow the establishment of a village in Macondo by one family. The father of the family, Jose Arcadio Buendia, is married to Ursula, honestly one of the best characters ever written. He's establishing this new village and he has come to this unknown land with his own dreams and his own hopes, and he's so fascinated with the innovations that this new world is about to bring him, and he's in pursuit of his own ambitions. Let me just read you the synopsis. Through little more than a settlement surrounded by mountains, Macondo has its wars and disasters, even its wonders and miracles. A microcosm of Colombian life, its secrets lie hidden, encoded in a book, and only Aureliano Buendia can fathom its mysteries and reveal its shrouded destiny. Blending political reality with magic, realism, fantasy with comic convention, 100 Years of Solitude is one of the most daringly original works of the 20th century. And you know what? I 100% agree with that. I think it was the writer himself who said about this book that it is like listening to your grandma telling you a fairy tale. And yes, it 100% is how you should read this book. Nothing in this book should be perceived as something very serious, because if you're going to analyze every detail of this book, you're just going to be lost. And I feel like when I first started reading this book, I was so confused because I did not understand the delirium that I was forced to plunge into. Because as much as this book is realistic, you have this political commentary and the character of Aureliano, who is so desperately trying to fight for his own freedom and for freedom of everybody else. You also are inevitably lost in the delirium, as I said. Here you find unknown languages that are invented, unknown technologies that are invented. Here the flowers are growing in somebody's teeth and somebody is dying just by flying away into the sky. So this book is literally like a fairy tale that your grandmother is telling you. I found very tiring, of course, the fact that everybody had the same names, but also this is a tale of one family who, as the family in John Steinbeck's book, is living actually the same life. And as Ursula, one of the main characters here, I actually think that every character in this book is a main character because they all have their stories, and as much as their stories do not really differ from each other, they all have their special inner selves. And if you read the book, you know what I mean. Basically, all of the characters are living the same life and they're all enclosed in this frame that was imposed by their family. So the destinies of this family is also pre-described. All the characters are condemned to this lonely love, and all of the marriages throughout the history of this family are loveless and hopeless, and every member of this family makes the same mistake. All of the members of this family, of Buendia family, they're trying to find their love and they're desperately seeking light and they're pursuing their dreams in this fever of freedom, and yet they're unable to find any. They're delirious with their inventions, and so many of them are plunged into their own world and they're unable to just soak in everything that is happening in reality, that they're just enclosing themselves in this loneliness. And this is just a tale of one single family, one single village. They're finding themselves in this cycle that is repeating itself all over and all over again. And this was said in the book too. I feel like because I read this book just after I've read East of Eden by John Steinbeck, I noticed this pattern of cycle right away, because in Steinbeck's book he accentuates the fact that in a family the destiny is repeated. So yes, the writing style, fascinating. Like, I've never seen anything like this before. And I've read this book for 2 weeks actually, because I was finding very difficult to keep up with the narrative because it was so quick and so chaotic. Like, I just had to fight my way through these pages, because as much as I was mesmerized by the fairy tale that I was discovering, I kind of felt it very hard to follow, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. I love this writing style. It's just so beautiful. You can sense the feeling behind this writing. You can sense the serenity of Macondo. And as much as its serenity is disturbed, you can also sense the wisdom behind the words. One of the characters that I loved the most in this book was Ursula, because in all of the chaos that was represented in her family, she was the only one who understood the pattern of their family and who understood all of the fatality. You just have to read it to understand the fairy tale. And while I was reading this book, I was also researching more of the facts on the political situation. I feel like it's going to be even more interesting if you know the background history of this book, and if you dive deeply into the political commentary and also the characters. You would think that because they have all the same name, they would be the same characters, but every one of them are different from each other. And as much as they repeat this unending cycle, they do, in their own way, live each other's destinies. And as it was in the case of John Steinbeck, by the end of this book, you will find hope. And also, you might find a little bit of magic in the world that surrounds you. Now, on to the next book. Oh my god, I did not expect to love this book, but I did. It's actually one of my favorites now, and I will come back to it every day. I actually got inspired by the character of Lee in East of Eden, and I decided to order a book that he was reading. He was reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I ordered it, and I loved every single minute of it. Marcus Aurelius is a Roman emperor. These are just the extracts, the remarks, meditations that he was writing in his notebooks, and they were never meant to be published, but here they are. I love this collection of meditations. First of all, I never was very into the genre of remarks. It was never my cup of tea. But nevertheless, I found this book so reassuring. I don't even know if you can call this a book because it is just a fragmentary piece. You can open it on any page and you can just read it. It's that simple. I never thought it would be my cup of tea, but here I am talking about this. These remarks and these meditations give you a new way to absorb all the life around you and to confront the future. Here, Marcus Aurelius presents us the idea of directing mind. Directing mind is the mind who is responsible for any of his actions, is doing all of its actions with a purpose, and is doing what is good for the community. And by community, Marcus Aurelius describes our whole humanity. So his idea is that if the community, which is a universe, is not hurt, you as an individual, you're not hurt either. And nothing can cause you harm because the gods will not let this happen. Anything that is good for a community is your purpose in life and should be your purpose. It was also very reassuring for me because I am always worried about my future. I'm always worried about my past. I'm a victim to nostalgia. Nostalgia hurts, actually. Like, you're not satisfied with your present life. You're also longing for your past, and you're also very worried about your future. I have very weird dynamic with my future. So yeah, that was very reassuring because his remarks are very accurate. And he basically underlines the fact that 100 years ago, it was all the same that it is now. So why would you want to live 300 years longer? And as you observe the world that he describes, his world of the Roman Empire, you kind of understand that the world we're living in right now is the same. And the Roman Empire has disappeared. His remarks did not. They're always going to be pertinent. So just let me read you a couple of his meditations, just because I was so moved by them and I was also so reassured. This is the best way to describe my feelings about this book. I was just cowed by the presence of Marcus Aurelius, and I was also going through my final exams, and I guess reading him helped me to stay grounded. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, in that it stands ready for what comes and is not thrown by the unforeseen. He is saying that you as a human being can be affected only by externals, but you are affected by externals only if you let your own judgments be put on the externals. Externals themselves cannot have any quality to them. A plant is nor good or bad. A thunderstorm is nor good or bad. It is us, humans, we put a judgment on things, and it is for us to strip naked all of the externals and look at them and analyze them. One of my favorite quotes is, and it's going to be a long one, one man follows a friend's funeral and is then laid out himself. You should always look on a human life as short and cheap. So one should pass through this tiny fragment of time in tune with nature and live it gladly, as an olive might fall when ripe, blessing the earth which bore it, and grateful to the tree which gave it growth. I don't know which is more reassuring than a letter from a Roman emperor telling you that the life is short and that all you have to care about is your present, because the present and this very minute is all you have. You don't have any past and you don't have any future yet. So it is for you to make a purpose for this present minute. And as a person with anxiety, I loved it. And I will recommend it to anyone who would ask me some life advice, because Marcus Aurelius has done a better job than I could ever do. So I hope you are inspired and you now will go and read these books. The books that I read in June were all classics, and now when I think of it, they are all interconnected. Most of them are about the destiny and about human life and the present moment and future, and how in families, members of the family might be condemned to a certain path, but it is for them to decide how to live their own life. Sounds very corny coming out of my mouth, but if you are also anxious about the future and about the flow of time, I suggest you read these books and leave your review in the comment section. These are the books that I read in June. Thank you for being here, and I hope you're having a great day. I wish you all the best. Thank you once again for watching, and bye.